Hey friends, thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. I hope you're having a wonderful day. If you could, make sure you give this video a like and make sure you subscribe for future content. So it seems like the tensions continue to escalate here between Russia and the United States, or rather those that are supporting Ukraine in its current war with Russia, as Mr. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, just made some more comments concerning nuclear war. And yeah, things, this comes on the back of comments he made yesterday, I believe, where he was saying that the tensions or the probability for a nuclear war was increasing, as we just saw that some drones uh, apparently attacked bases, military bases inside of Russian territory. Of course, some people were saying that these drones were manned by Ukraine, um, and others were saying that it's not definitive. We can't say who the drones uh, were being manned by, but the speculation is that it was Ukraine who launched, drones to attack these bases. However, they didn't achieve their target, since the anti-air defenses of the Russians were able to take out the drones. But apparently, one of the drones crashed in one of the military bases, which caused some damage and might have killed some people there. Um, you'd have to go look at the reports in detail about that. But again, that's all just speculation. And with any time in war, you really can't be 100% sure of what either side is saying, unless you're on the battlefield or you're a witness to these things. So we just have to rely on the information that we do know, extrapolate from there what we believe to be the most logical, and insert our opinion in that. But one thing is for sure is things are escalating, and since we are talking about nuclear superpowers here, the United States mainly and Russia, there is always the ultimate possibility of nuclear war. And that's exactly why I wanted to make this video here, because this article from Fox News uh, is talking exactly about that. So let me go ahead and read this for you. Again, today is Friday, and Mr. Putin did make these comments today, so this is very fresh. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday once again drew international attention when he warned that if even one missile enters Russian territory, hundreds of warheads will respond. I assure you, after the early warning system receives a signal of a missile attack, hundreds of our missiles are in the air, he said from a summit in Kyrgyzstan, reported Russian news outlet RIA. It is impossible to stop them, he said. There will be nothing left of the enemy because it is impossible to intercept 100 missiles. This, of course, is a deterrent, a serious deterrent, he added. So he's pretty much saying that, if any missiles do enter Russian territory, they have a deterrent where they will retaliate or respond with hundreds of missiles, which will be impossible to stop because there will be so many of them, and they will completely destroy the enemy. But only as a defensive measure is what he seems to be emphasizing, sort of. Putin made headlines after he appeared to suggest that he may make changes to Russia's nuclear deterrence doctrine by employing a first strike policy. Okay, so looks like he's thinking of switching from a defensive stance to an offensive stance. here, according to what he's saying, um, which he referred to as a disarming strike, a strategy he said is motivated by the current U.S. deterrence policy. Russia already has this strategy embedded in its nuclear doctrine. Washington does have a policy that allows it to use a nuclear weapon not only in retaliation to a nuclear attack, but also in response to non nuclear threats. And so does Moscow, explained Russia expert and former DIA intelligence officer for Russian doctrine and strategy, Rebecca Koffler. So, looks like the Russians are saying, or Vladimir Putin is saying that the U.S. Has that doctrine in their military where they can allow themselves to use nuclear weapons as a defensive measure in case other nations use nuclear weapons against them, but they can also use them to even if the enemy didn't use any nuclear weapons. So, if they find it necessary, they can use nuclear weapons to eliminate targets that don't necessarily pose a nuclear threat. And Russia's pretty much saying that they've given themselves that right also. So this sort of kind of implies essentially that they're kind of the Russians are kind of saying, hey, that means that we could use these weapons of mass destruction in Ukraine or against the Ukrainian army, even though they don't have nuclear weapons, as a deterrence, right? So if things tend to get a little bit more heated, they could use some small tactical nukes or something like that to finish off the opponent. So, you got to read in between the lines with these things. But yeah, essentially it's all nuclear talk. I guess, Mr. Putin wants to pretty much let everyone know that they will use these things if push comes to shove, if they find themselves sort of threatened, they will use these weapons in order to take out the enemy. So very interesting stuff here. And they're saying this is exactly the U.S.'s stance on the matter also. So they're accusing the U.S. of using the weapons as a as a threat or as a tool to scare the enemy, in war and things like that, which is true. It tends to be the case when you have a nation that has nuclear weapons. At some point, they are going to flex those capabilities in order to gain an advantage on the battlefield. That is the reason they were invented, after all. So we keep on reading here. It says, Putin's comments come just days after 3 separate drone strikes. Now, here is the news about the drone strikes that I was talking about. So it looks like it was 3 separate drone strikes hit bases hundreds of miles within Russia's borders. So not in Ukraine, not the territory that Russia's taken and annexed, essentially, but actually inside Russian territory, pre-war Russian territory. So yeah, it says, after these 3 separate drone strikes hit bases hundreds of miles within Russia's borders, an attack that Moscow blamed squarely on Ukraine. Based on the existing Russian doctrine, Russia can respond with nuclear strikes because Engels Air Base is the home to nuclear-capable bombers. So the Russians are saying, based on our military teaching and our preparedness, Russia, can respond with nuclear weapons, possibly small tactical nukes, to these drone attacks inside of Russia, because those drones attacked bases that are nuclear capable, that have nuclear capable bombers. So essentially, they might have nuclear weapons there, or a nuclear arsenal in those bases, which would be a threat to the highest order of national security, since essentially it would mean that an enemy is trying to take out your most powerful weapons, the only weapons that can actually uh, not 100% assure your safety, but at least assure mutual assured destruction. So Russia is saying, according to our teaching, since this attack took place, we could respond with nuclear weapons. Um, and that is pretty alarming indeed. So it says here, Kofler explained, and then let's keep on reading a little bit here. Um, it says Putin holds council meeting on domestic security following 3 air base explosions. Kyiv has not accepted responsibility for the strikes, but the attacks outside of Ukraine's borders were a brutal war where a brutal war has raged for more than 9 months, put top defense officials on the alert this week. It is a terrible war in Ukraine. It is also a war that can become a full-fledged war that spreads into a major war between NATO and Russia. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said in an interview Friday. Um, okay. Yeah, well, that's pretty much it. Ever since these drone strikes a couple of days ago, it seems like the uh, the rhetoric that we started seeing out of the Russians and Vladimir Putin, and specifically, was nuclear talk. So you had these drone strikes that took place a couple of days inside of Russian territory, and immediately we get these interviews with Putin saying that the risk of nuclear war is rising, and now the Russians are pretty much saying, "Hey, look, the U.S. Uh, they say they can use nuclear weapons if they choose to, even if they aren't being attacked by nuclear weapons. So we have the same teaching, or we have the same stance for our nation, uh, and also those bases that were just attacked by these drones did have nuclear capable bombers, and insinuating that they could have also had nuclear weapons at those bases, or that they could hold nuclear weapons. And because these bases were attacked and they have these nuclear capabilities, that is, the ultimate threat, and that gives them the right to respond to these threats with nuclear weapons. So, again, the drones attack bases inside of Russia, and then all we hear is, nuclear, nuclear, nuclear. And of course, that is the last thing these nations want, because it's mutually assured destruction. So, there won't be any war to have, or any political discussion or anything. It will be, the end of things. Everything will be burning. Everything will dissolve. It's nuclear power. It literally melts everything around it, and these are weapons that are unfathomable to the mind, how powerful these things are. So that's the last resort. Obviously, that's the last button to push. I do believe, unfortunately, it will be pushed at some point in the near future, but it certainly seems that Vladimir Putin is very aware of this possibility. Um, it doesn't seem like we hear a lot of this nuclear talk, in the Western press. It's almost like they're kind of ignoring that there are nuclear weapons in existence, or they're at play. But you have to be honest about the matter. That's everyone's worst fear, and it seems that things are only escalating. Like I said, I think they will be used. Inevitably, they will be used. I'm starting to think they might even be used before an actual major exchange between nuclear superpowers. So, like Russia is saying, they could possibly use some small tactical nukes in Ukraine. Either way, I think in the near future we will see, uh, some small usage of nuclear weapons as it leads to, the bigger conflict, a World War III scenario. So, yeah, very alarming stuff. Also, very interesting, but uh, no need to worry. Just put your faith in God and, you know, live right, do what is right, be honest with your neighbors, treat your neighbors correctly, and just be aware of these things, be watchful so that, you can be prepared for when these things do start taking place and, people begin to panic um, uh, because of how, serious this is. So, anyways, let me know down in the comments below what you think about all of this. If you think, there will be some small usage of nuclear weapons here in the near future, I'd like to know your opinion. Also, make sure you subscribe for future content. That's going to be it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. Have a wonderful day and God bless.